with VBA. So questions, you can put them in private in the chat if you don't want people to know that you're asking them. I do want to, I'm going to open up Excel here and then kind of go over doing the assignment again. Questions on the monthly budget one. You can unmute yourself too if you like. Okay. Not letting you get access to number 9. Let's see. Did you go through all of these parts in 8?
It's not letting me either.
Did you go through all the parts in 8?
Yeah.
Do you see a green check mark up here on your 8?
Yeah.
Okay. So, it does say logged. That's strange. Let's see. The only prerequisite should be number 8. Let's fix that right now.
My week 10 is locked. Looks like week 9 and 10 are the only ones locked and everything else is okay.
I think I know why. That's because of COVID. Yep. Because last semester we had to switch them around, and so it got locked when it got copied over. So as long as you did everything in 8, that should be good. Be a check mark. So 10 automatically the same thing too, because it's based off of 9. So thank you for letting me know that. We're good there. Looks like everything else is straight. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so let's see. So when making a macro, you cannot select the cell and recording it, right? That's not true. That's not true. You can select the cell when recording it. The reason why we did not want to select the cell when recording it, when we were doing the changing colors, is because you want it to be able to select the cell and then have the macro change that color. If you had selected a cell while recording the macro, that means every time you played the macro, it would go to that cell that you selected. So, and I know we mentioned it, I believe I demonstrated it too in one of the videos. And that was another thing. I had some people emailing me this weekend saying that they couldn't, they needed a password for the to get into the video. So the password, I put the password and the link to the video in the same email. When I replied back asking did that password not work or something, I didn't hear anything back. So I really do need to know that. So if any of you that, because it was more than one person, so if any of you that have been watching the videos that I sent out via your mail or your email, your student email, if the password that went along with that's not working, I really do need to know that so that we can see what's going on there. So okay, so I'll demonstrate that again with the selecting of the cell. So if I record a macro, I'm just going to call it macro 1. If I select cell G3 while doing so, oops, and then I were to do something to it, such as change the fill the black text 1, and start recording, you'll notice that, go back and get this no fill again. What you'll notice is that when I play this, even if no matter where I am, it always goes back to G3. So that was the reason, again, why we did not want to do that. You can even see that in the code. You'll see that it goes to G3 in it. See, the first thing that happens here is going to that cell specifically. So it is again doing everything that we recorded it to do. So that's why we have to be very careful and why you want to plan things out. Um, so if you wanted it to go to a specific cell, because some of you did that for your program of VBA, you wanted it to go to specific cells. Then in your recording, you would have selected those. Okay, so okay, cool. All right. So someone else said that the 15th recording video said it was being decrypted, so it wouldn't let you all watch it. Did anyone else have issues watching the 15th video? No. Okay. That could have been a Maricopa thing. Then maybe at the same time. So, because some of you had no issues, others you did. So it could have been like when you tried to watch it, um, something could have happened to the system.
I would say the same thing, but it ended up loading.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So I don't know. It could have been an internet connection thing too. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that happened. Uh, so I am actively. I guess I could show you all. Uh, it takes a long time, and I mean a long time. But I am actively loading up your videos on YouTube, like I promised I would, so that way I can make links. That might be that'll be easier for many of you. So yeah, and then they'll be able to put it directly in Canvas to you. So it is still taking some. I don't even understand why, because I've had videos on YouTube before. It usually takes, like it may take some hours, but never like over the weekend leaving your computer on. So I'm not really sure why that's happening either. But yeah, I don't know if any of you tubers out there know why. You probably aren't actually doing any hour-long ones. I know that was an issue at first because I had to just told several times, oh, 20 minutes is a better time limit and stuff. So if any of you tubers still have any experience with that, videos being over like an hour long, those of you that maybe do podcasts, let me know. Let's figure this out. All right. So that was the one of the questions that someone had about that, about recording. Um, why we didn't want to select the cell during like the first one. Um, I hope that's more evident now. Is so that you can go to other places, like just have whatever you want to select, and then have the macro work on that. Uh, okay. Other questions about the monthly budget one? I do recall questions in regards to I don't know what to color. And again, I hope that was clear. So if things aren't clear when we're going over it, um, please say something then. So one of the because I know that question came up in class, I thought both days I thought that was pretty clear. So after the second one at least, so it did not matter how you colored it. You had to explain how you colored it at the end in your comments when you turned it in. So I gave examples as well. I think I gave like two different examples just to help you out. You didn't have to follow those examples, but they were for that was just to make things a little clearer for you. Because again, I know that as being a student, sometimes if a instructor gives you something that's a little more open, it can seem fun, and other times it's like, why don't you just tell me what to do? But the instruction was for you to decide, and then if you didn't have anything, you could just use those examples. So if you wanted to, some people just colored their titles. Like I colored the expenses red because I don't like to lose money. Colored the pay green because I like to gain money. I colored the reconciliation yellow because I was scared. It doesn't matter to me. I just wanted an explanation because when you do something, there's a reason for you doing it, and that's the same thing when you program something. There should be an actual purpose and use to it. That was the point of that. Is VBA only used for Microsoft applications? Yes, it is. Now you can code in Visual Basic, which is the language that you're using in VBA. And there are jobs that still use that. So a lot of people tell you no one does VB anymore, or Visual Basic, and some jobs will use VBA to begin their work, and then just take the code and use it in some other application afterwards. For instance, if any of you ever heard of this, what's that company called? They have movie theaters, and popcorn, Harkins. Sure, you all have heard of Harkins. Well, Harkins software development is all done, and actually they do it all in VBA. That's the way they program things. So they program everything in VBA, and then they translate it over to whatever they need to use it in. So if they're using it directly in Microsoft applications, they leave it, but sometimes they'll translate it over to VB, which pretty much just cutting out the code and using it somewhere else. Or they'll make some kind of special forms from it and things like that for people to use throughout the company. So I think it's kind of cool. We have had students from South that have worked there, and it's like they see what we're doing, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know people actually taught this. This is cool." Because the only way they learned it was from getting the job there. So if you really get into this, you can go apply at Harkins for development, software development. We used to have a course on it too, but again, because of the popularity, we stopped offering the course in it. But yeah, you still can find some uses out there. Other questions about this one, about the monthly budget one? Oh, all right. What about the programming with VBA assignment? Um, I know the questions that I had coming in, starting actually on Thursday, which is the right time to do that, was why can't I just record? Um, and I know I want to point out, and it was more than one person. So I again, this is something I thought was said in class, but it's also listed here, and I put it in bold for that reason. You can do this just using the record feature and then viewing the code, or just going straight to code. And the reason for that was because, as I told you, the simpler way for most people, especially when you're getting started with something new, is using the record macro because it automatically does the coding for you. So you can go back in the background and see, okay, how does the code work? What does it look like? Recording a certain feature allows you to be able to see directly, okay, what code goes with that type of feature. And it's a great way of learning VBA, to be honest. That's how, honestly, like the example I have on here that I'll tell you, even other programmers will probably look at this and be like, man, I can't believe you did that as a something quick to do in VBA, because this is using a higher level of programming known as recursion. That's when you call a function within itself. Um, but I did all of this, like all of this, with the exception of this last part. I did all of this in the message box. Everything was done by recording the macro, because it saved time, and then I have to think about, okay, what's everything that I need to have? Because of course this gave me different patterns and stuff like that. That were X1 pattern automatic, pattern and index, and I didn't need all those things. Right? As I showed y'all before, you probably hit decipher if you need it or not. One way would be, you do the recording, you delete a line, run it, see if it still runs the same. So I did all that real quick, and then I added my message box, um, added a variable, which we call dim in this language, and it was a yes or a no. So if it was yes, it did this stuff. If it was no, it did this stuff. And then after that, the last part was I'm just gonna make it call itself again. So it was simple in the case that I didn't have to know VBA to do this. All I had to do was do the recordings, get the simplest part of it. Then after that, to take it a little more advanced, I looked up some things that I wanted to have. And that's how you actually program in life, like I mean, in your life. As I mentioned, I tried to show it on last Monday that programming isn't just, oh, let me type in this other language on a computer and make the computer do things. And you all program every day. If you want to learn how to do something you're not quite sure, you look it up. Or if you have an idea of something you want to do and you're like, okay, how do I get started? Or how do I make this better? You look it up. You'll watch a YouTube video on it. You'll do a Google search and just read an article real quick. Or you'll do a Google search and look at the one of the little drop down parts that gives you a quick synopsis. Like that's what you do. And life is no different when it comes to this. Okay. Yeah. So, and I know some people said that they had trouble uploading their assignment as well, or their Word doc. Looks like many people got around that by putting it in their comments. Some people just did it directly. Um, so I apologize for that issue. Hopefully that got fixed as well. Because again, it looks like some of you were able to upload it. Um, so I'm not sure what actually kept some of you from uploading it. I tried to go in and look to see if it truly limited it to just the macro file. I didn't actually see that there, although I do see it on this page, but in the background I don't see that. So I'm not sure. Just me being honest, I'm not sure why why that's happening to some and not others. So yeah.
Yeah, when I was trying to upload my Word doc, it didn't let me because it said it was only limited to XLSM files.
Yeah, the
So
macro.
yeah, so I copied and pasted it onto the text box and then attached my macro-enabled workbook onto the submission.
Yeah. Yeah, you weren't you weren't the only one. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I honestly am not sure why some people were able to do it and others weren't. Because that limit, like I know I went back and removed it again after some people told me that issue, but I still see it there. I know sometimes Canvas in the past will reset itself, but I don't see why that was happening. Because it was like working for some, not for others. So, but just like you did, you came up with a solution real quick. Some of you emailed me and said, "What can I do?" Some of you just went ahead and just like screw it out, uploaded it in the comments, and it worked fine too that way. So worst case scenario, like some of you did, you just asked me and then I gave you a solution, or you just worked around it. So uh, thank you for doing that, and hopefully we won't have an issue with that again. Because having you all email me your assignments would not be fun. Okay, so any other questions with programming with VBA? All right. Okay. So next up, we're still in Excel, but we're going to look at a different concept here, and that's going to be databases. So those of you that do not have a Windows computer, you will need to let me know. I think I've kind of mentioned this offhandedly earlier in the weeks, but I had one person in class tell me that they did not have one. But I know many of you do not have one because I know many of you have a Mac. Um, so, oh, that was another question. Someone asked how to do the VBA stuff on a Mac because they were having trouble. That was a question someone had. They were having trouble with looking at VBA on the Mac. So, okay. So, if you had issues with that, actually, how about this? As someone that does have a Mac computer, would any of you volunteer to showing your screen, and then you could actually demonstrate getting to the VBA? Maybe open up one of your XML files, one of your macro-enabled workbooks. Would anyone volunteer to do that? Just so we can have a demonstration on the video for them. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, it'll be all right. I sent them some YouTube images, but I think they still may have been having some issues. So and I don't think they want to volunteer either. Okay, that's fine. All right. So I'll whoever the person that definitely needed help with that. I'll see what else I can do with you. Maybe in office hours. Remember, I have office hours from 4 to 5:30. Maybe you could share your screen then, and I could quickly give you a demonstration of how to get to it. So, okay. So databases. This is what the world is about nowadays. Everything is about data. Uh, big data is a big buzzword in the world, but just data, period, because data can tell people things about you. Um, people can make very wrong assumptions about you based off of data. I'm gonna say like stereotypes is all data based. They didn't use like collect data and then make stereotypes come from that. However, they did. We would collect data not on a computer to come up with stereotypes. We did it based off of what we saw around us. I mean, we do that now, right? If you see people of any certain group do certain things, and they always do that. The next time you meet one individually, you'll assume the same thing. Like the old story. Sure, you all have seen one of the greatest movies of all time, High School Musical. But you know, when they go into the cafeteria, everybody had their little cliques set up, and you just knew what those people would be talking about or what they would be doing, just because of who they were. There wasn't a question there. So that was all based off of data that you're getting in your mind, and then you making assumptions. However, you know that showed us, oh, you can't trust the status quo and all that. You know that's the movie was displaying. But in life now, that data isn't just collected in our mentally. We still do that, but we can collect data and store it in a computer or in a very large computer. In some cases, we'll need to, but in something that's known as a database, which is a way to relate the data very easily and have it organized. You're good. And have your computer completely not computer have your data organized so that you can make those assumptions and you can do different calculations to make assumptions for you. I work a lot with data, so just want to give you an example of something. So with the like upcoming elections, so one thing that was done was that, and some of you maybe have had this happen to you. You would get these text messages that would tell you, or that would say, "Hey, I'm doing you. Thank you for being a blah, like a Democrat or a Republican, even if you're not at all. Uh, and thank you for voting for us." Or, "Hey, have you voted yet? The Democrats really need you. Hey, you voted yet? Trump needs your support." Um, so regardless of where you stand with that, some of you may have gotten lots and lots of text messages. Some of you may have only gotten a few. Some of you may have gotten stuff in the mail in regards to that. A lot of you. And so one thing that we did in one of my classes, we just kind of talked about that, and we only had a small sample, so it was a bad sample because it's only the people that were in that class. So, but what we did was we wanted to look at certain forbidden things. So you're not allowed to get data on race. Um, there's other ones. That's one I really want to put on, because that was what we actually saw when we looked at our data. So there was what we had was out of 20 for the 21 students, every student that was black received, or everyone student that was black received information about Democrats, and then but every person that was white will receive both. Not always receive both, but there was no direct correlation there. But we had 100% or a correlation of 1 for all the black students, and then we wanted to see how much this evolved. Our class has about like close to 1,000 students, and so we wanted to see how that would expand. And that's what we learned, that you're not actually allowed to do that, but we did find it curious. And our instructor said, well, no one is allowed to actually do data on race anymore. And there's a couple others for forbidden things you're allowed to ask. However, he told us that a lot of times to bypass that, people will look at certain zip codes because they know that, oh, people in this zip code are generally Black. People in this zip code are generally Mexican. These people in this zip code are Native, and so they'll do that instead because they legally can't do statistics based off of someone's race. So that's just a quick little. I thought that was interesting. But we can use data to do so much. It's used when it comes to marketing. There's a great example. I think I mentioned that in this class, maybe not. So if I did, just tell me I'm repeating myself again. But there was an example of this guy. They shopped at Target at a Target cart, and they would get a little magazine from, hey, this is going on in Target. But the coupons would always be specific to them in a way. And he noticed his daughter was getting stuff, and his daughter started some of the stuff she started getting had to do with like contraceptives, things to keep her from getting pregnant, like for protection stuff. And he's like, man, she's a teenager. This is weird. Why is she getting this stuff? And then things continued on, and it was like cribs and other things like that you would need for a baby. And the dad's like, hold up. So first Target's like trying to pressure my daughter into having sex, and then now they're like talking about her having a kid, and she was, I want to say she was 15 when she first started getting, or when he first saw the stuff that she was that was coming to her, like her getting her own Target stuff, which was another weird thing for him because she didn't have her own card. So he went to the store manager and he complained to him, and they're like, sir, we have no power over that. That's sent from corporate office. We will contact them. I am sorry for that. They gave him a bunch of free stuff. He didn't care about that. He was just pissed. And so later on, after his second time going, because he saw all the stuff about having a baby, he actually came back to the store and apologized to them because when the daughter saw that, or when he went home to talk about it, that he had been keeping it from her, she freaked out and then went and got a pregnancy test, and turned out she was pregnant. And he's walking around with egg on his face, but at the same time, he was completely shocked that the data that Target had, or just period, that had been collected on his daughter was able to predict that she would have sex, unprotected sex, and that she would get pregnant. And so they actually gave her coupons and stuff ahead of time to help her prepare for her new life. So that was very, it was really messed up, but it also sort of opened up that family, and that their daughter found out she was pregnant earlier than she would have known. So kind of weird, but yeah. But anyway, you can use data to do so much. So not just storing in to say, okay, I have this information somewhere. So before we move on to the pivot table stuff, just give you some basics when it comes to a database. So when you're looking at a database, you want to have a uniqueness about something. So some type of way to know that I'm looking at this specific record or this specific data point. So a record or a data point would be a collection of data that's all related together. So for instance, if you have a driver's license or some type of identification card, if you pull that out, that could be a data point or a record. And the information that's on there, the data that's on there, when put together, becomes information that tells you about, hey, this is this person's name, their driver's license number, or their state identification number. This is where they live. This is how old they are. Here's their birthday. It tells you a lot of things about that person, or about that data point, or about that record. However, it'll be different from someone else, right? But how would you uniquely identify it with someone else? Well, some people will say, oh, their name. Well, how many of you have met someone that has the same name as you, or have joined a Facebook group that all the your first name, last names in the world are a part of? Yeah. So, how many of you have met someone that has the same name as you, same birthday? Yeah, that's definitely happened. Or someone that has the same birthday? That's definitely happens, right? You only need 23 people in a room, I believe, is what the probability comes out to be in order for people to have the same birthday, at least to a pair. So that one's out of the question. That's not unique. So that's why that whole that driver's license ID or that state ID identification number is so important and why it's given because it can uniquely identify you. They don't put your social security number on there because then people might, if something happens to it, people can do stuff with that. But your social security is another way that you are uniquely identified in databases. At the school, your MEID is the way that you are uniquely identified. There are tons of ways that you are uniquely identified. But most of them aren't what people would expect at first. For instance, your first name, last name is not a good way to uniquely identify you. Most databases actually nowadays, what they'll do is they have a generator that just generates the next identification number because it makes it easier, right? I'm just starting at 1 and we'll go up from here. There's no reason for me to try to come up with, okay, let me look at what you have and say, okay, yeah, that can uniquely identify this. Sometimes it's a connection of some things though, depending on the type of system that they have. And I'll actually show you one because we're gonna look at it now, or as soon as I finish explaining this. But so that's what a data set is, or sorry, database is. And each one of those records has different pieces on it. Like I mentioned, you have your first name, your last name, your date of birth, your state identification number, your address, the type of vehicle you have. We're talking about the driver's license specifically, type of cars or vehicles you can drive, the state that you're from. So all of that is on there, but each one of those is a separate category on its own, right? If we took a collection in class and said, okay, everyone just tell me the state on your identification card or on your driver's license, everyone will be able to give that, right? Because we know it's on all of those driver's licenses, because all the driver's licenses have to have the same type of information on it. So we can take that collection. We could also say, okay, everyone tell the first name that's listed on there. Everyone give the birthday on that. So each one of those is a separate category, also known as a field. Some people think of it as their series or their columns, which makes sense as well. And we'll see more of that over the next 2 weeks. But just to give you a starting point to a database. So in essence, let's throw this open. So in essence, for a database, the way it looks is that we have a way to identify each record or data point, and that would go here. And so again, the easiest thing to do is just to generate numbers. And then across the top, what we'll do is we'll have our column header. So like just the examples I gave earlier. So we can do like first name, last name, date of birth, address, state, right? And we can just keep going, adding different things here. So, and then the stuff will get filled out for each identification. Now, this would not be considered to be really a part of the record. This is just how we're identifying each record. However, as you can see, it's very important for that to be attached to the correct spot. Okay, because even if we then everyone gave their different first names, I could alphabetize these to make it easier to look at, but these record numbers would also move with whatever they're connected to. So, and we'll look more at that over these next 2 weeks, but I did want to give you a visual example of what something could look like, first by doing it mentally and then displaying it on the screen. So a lot of times people will also look at this and be like, oh, we're just making tables. Yes, and a table is a way that we actually define the collection of data. So if you have a collection of records or data points like this, we call that a table. So it's a good name for it. All right. Speaking of tables, we're going to do something with a table. So, and I like to start off teaching databases by looking at a pivot table or a table in general, because we can look at tables in Excel, and we'll look at tables in Microsoft Access as well. But looking at an Excel is probably something that you all are at least familiar with. You've seen Excel, well, you actually have written, right, already in the last couple of weeks, you've written things that would look like tables, right, in Excel. The first assignment you did, you're practicing basics with Excel. You had your assignment names, you had your total points received, you had the total points possible, and then you even had percentages. So you created some type of table, right? And each assignment was uniquely, it could be the way you uniquely identify each record there. Okay, your expenses, you had what the expense was for, you had the how much it was, right? You could look at that and like, okay, that's a table. In Excel, we actually have to define a table as a table. But I will demonstrate that. Here's some information about how to do a pivot table, and then some other things you can do with it. I am not going to click on this. This is supplemental for you all, but I definitely suggest going through it. I think the video that's provided will do it enough for you when going through this assignment. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna download this data so that we can begin talking about a pivot table. And because I'm downloading from online, I need to enable editing so it knows that I trust the source. All right, so we have in this we have player numbers, we have a league, we have teams, batting averages, home runs, statuses, all-stars, votes. So this is baseball. Okay. And so we have a player number for each one. We have a league, so what league they belong to and the team they belong to. One thing that you will notice is that the player numbers are very unique. Right? There's no two player numbers that are the same in this list. That's not real true. That's not true in real life, right? You can have multiple players that have the same number in baseball. I actually don't know if that's true. I don't watch baseball, so if someone says no, it's not true. Each one's unique. Let me know, but I don't believe they are because in my mind it doesn't make sense because no other sport does that. But so how would you? So in this case, to uniquely identify the records, we actually set up the player numbers individually. But otherwise, what we could do is do a combination of the number, the league, and the team, because there should be no two players with the same number on the team. I know that has happened in special occasions in honor and memory of people, but they're not actually still listed as that number. So, okay. So this is 200 and I forgot how many, 250. Yeah, 250 different lines. So really, it's 249 data points because this first one is the titles of each of the columns or each of the fields or each of the categories, however you want to say that, category, field, or the columns. And so what we want to do with this is we want to be able to do some type of analysis. And so all analysis is describing something about the data given to you. So like I said, we do mental we do this mentally all the time just by taking in data and information around us by what we see, and then we make assumptions based off of it. I give one I always found funny when growing up. I had a friend for years. They never came over to my house until we were like in our 20s. But uh, every black friend they had did not like chocolate like at all. And so, and our school was actually very, very diverse. So about 40%, about 40% black. Yeah. Anyway, so they had been around. They had been around a lot of black people, and every black person they knew they had not seen eat chocolate, or they knew that they did not like it because they told them they did not like it. So when they came over my house and they saw me eating chocolate, they like almost freaked out. So some people might say, "Oh, they're ignorant" or whatever, but no, it's not. It's not really true. That's just what they saw. You can go as far as you're led. So if every person you know doesn't of a certain type doesn't like something, or you've never seen them eat it, you can make those assumptions based off the data that you've gathered that, oh, this must be true. Correlation equals causation. So some people think that, right? Correlation does not equal causation. So for those of you that are aware of what that is, correlation is how two things relate to each other. So it could it's like a strong relationship or a weak relationship. So in her eyes, if you were black, then you didn't like chocolate. That was simple. She had 100% in her mind until she saw me eat chocolate, and found out that I liked it. Causation would be that if the first thing happens, then it causes B to happen. So for that case, you could say that, oh, if the person's black and they don't like chocolate, like, oh, that's automatic. That's the cause because they're black. Like, no, that's not true. Most of the time when people do cause action, or you can think of it as a cause and effect. The issue is, like, if you just flat out say it out loud, sometimes you're able to hear like, no, that doesn't make sense. Again, I think I mentioned the example with the stork and the babies. So if you were to do an experiment to see how many storks you have in a country and how many babies are born, you'll actually notice that the number of storks, that as the number of storks increase, the number of babies increase. And so there's a very strong correlation with that. And so we all know about the story. Well, hopefully we know about the story of the stork and the baby, right? There's actually a movie about it. I think Andy Samberg was in that. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, storks go around delivering the babies. So someone did an actually took data on this to see, do storks really deliver babies? Of course they know they don't, but they thought it'd be a funny thing to look at. And so they found a very, very strong correlation between the two. Almost one. It was in the 90s. And so the conclusion of that, someone could say, oh, I guess storks do actually deliver babies. That's not true. There's another cause that's happening between them. And generally that's what's happening. And so the cause was they were able to look at land mass. And so the larger the land is, the more babies you have, because people feel more comfortable to have children. And the larger the land mass, the more storks will actually come to live there. And it's kind of the same thing. They'll populate more as well because there's larger land mass. So that was the real cause. So yeah, it's a funny thing. All right, and some people may, when we look at when we do some analysis on the data we have here for the baseball team, some people may say, oh, like, look how many votes the Alphas got. They must be like the best. They must be the best team in the entire American League, or they must be the best team. Period. People may believe that, right? So like, yeah, like if say the Lakers' whole starting lineup was in the NBA All-Star game, people would be like, man, the Lakers must be really, really good, when they might not be, right? So that's happened many years. So yeah, glad you brought that up. Correlation and cause action. That's good. All right, so we have all this data. You all probably could enter this stuff. If I gave this to you on a sheet of paper and add you enter this, you probably could do it. But you'll also probably be pissed that I made you enter in 250 different. Actually, 250 times 6. So it's 1,000, 1,500. Yeah, so 1,500 different data points. You'd probably be mad if I asked you to do that. So but so this is already here. We do now want to do some analysis on it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Control A, because it selects everything that has data in it. And because that's one way for me to be lazy, I could have also gone up here and did A1 to G250, because I know it goes to line 250. Or I could have clicked and dragged all the way down there. But what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to insert a table, just so you can see what a table looks like in Excel. Let's do it from here. So there's two ways to do this. On the Home tab, I can just do Format as Table, which automatically allows me to pick a style for it. I could also go to the Insert tab and actually select Table, and it will become a table. So I really just wanted you all to see what a table actually looks like in Excel. So one thing with the table is that it then says, hey, where's my data at? And then does your table have headers? So does it have those column headers at the top already? If it doesn't, if you uncheck this, Excel will put some for you at the top and call it column 1, column 2, column 3. But since we have some, I'm just gonna click OK. I could change the style of it. As I showed you before, I could have picked it if I wanted to. So the cool thing here is that now if I want to, I could actually say, hey, you know what? I have all this stuff here, but I only want to look at the American League. And so creating a table in Excel does, it allows you to do those filters very quickly. So I can click the drop down for the league and say, I'm only going to look at the American teams. Okay. And notice down here in the status bar, it'll actually tell me out of the 249 records, only 85 are coming from the, 85 of them are coming from the American League. Okay. And there's a couple other things I could do with that as well. Maybe I could filter this to only look at the alphas. And I see 25 of the players coming from the alphas. All right, maybe I could do that for each team, and then do some small comparisons to see how many of them at least got one all-star vote. All right, but now that's taking a little long to do. So it'd be nice if there was a quicker way to do that. Something else that I may want to do, get the alphas up here, is maybe I want to know, well, how many all-star votes did the alphas get? And maybe I could just do a sum on that, right? Or maybe I want to know what the average one is. Again, I could just do a sum on that. But something else that I can do, make that screen go away. When I insert a table, I get this design contextual tab. There's something called a total row. What it does is at the bottom, it'll insert a new row. It allows me to do certain calculations on it. For instance, here, click here, and I can take, I can take the sum of all the all-star votes, so I get 616 of them. I can take the average number of all-star votes, I get 24.64 here. I could take the max number of all-star votes, I get 100. I take the minimum, get 0. I take the standard deviation, which would tell me what the spread looks like across it. So it's about 28 between certain groupings. I could take the count of them and say, oh, I have 25 of them. And I could do that on any of these. I can take the average of the batting averages if I want to. Right? So the total row is really cool because it allows me to do some quick analysis on a table. And then I can filter parts of that table to do analysis as well by finding these totals. So it's very helpful. However, still, like, we had 249 data points, right? And can you imagine me going through each of these and saying, okay, that was the alphas team. Let's look at the betas instead. Right, total world's still there and recalculate it. And okay, let me look at Charlie's. Right, that's going to take forever, but it's going to take long. So there has to be another way to do this and to do it quickly. So I'm going to undo back to oops, too far. Okay, yeah. All right. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create a pivot table, which I actually could have left this as a table at this point. A1 G. So to create a pivot table, I'm going to go to Insert tab, and I got two options. I have Recommended Pivot Table and I have Pivot Table. Recommended Pivot Table will say, hey, looking at this data, this is probably what you want to do to summarize it. So I'll just automatically do some things for you. I prefer to build it myself, and that's what I'm going to do, because that way you all can see how how to build it and what it does and how to use it. So here's my range, A1 to G 250. If I had an external source of data, like another Excel workbook somewhere or worksheet somewhere, or even an Access file, this is where I could do that. I'm going to choose where I want it to go to. So I could put it on an existing worksheet. I could tell it to go to, if there was something here. I do have another Excel open, so I could tell it to go to Book 1's Excel, go to Book 1 Sheet 2 if I want it. But I'm just going to put it on a new worksheet. And if I want to analyze multiple tables, I could put it to a data model. So I'm going to click OK. Notice here it says, hey, this will be where your report goes once I start choosing fields. Notice how earlier on, when I was going through the fundamentals of a database, I call these fields. I also said they're also called categories or just columns. So those are the fields. We go back to our sheet 1. these were our fills. When we're looking at our pivot table, we're saying choosing fills for the pivot table fill list. Look at our fills, right? We see the same things. So notice how that language is used throughout all of this. It doesn't change. So these are all our fills. Okay. So something that I do want to express for what we're about to do, pay very close attention to what we're about to do. And there's a reason for it. So I'm going to go over we're placing these fields in the different spots, what it does, okay? And the best way in order to place it, where to start at. And so there's a good reason for this. So I'm going to go back to the instructions for your assignment just so you can see what you're asked to do. So we're asked to put league in the column sections and team in the rows sections. So let's go do just that. So when we're building a pivot table, we've seen what a table looks like, right? We have our column headers, and then I also told you we have different records as our rows. So what I put in row will be the record header. Okay. So for instance, I think what I said was the instruction says to put team in the rows column. When I do that, my teams are on the rows. That means that when I look at row 4, this will be all information about alphas. When I look at row 6, it'll be everything about Charlies. Okay. My columns, what I put in columns here will be the fields that I'm specifically looking at. So the categories or the data I want to know about each record. For instance, if I put the league that are in here, that will tell me the category for each one of their records. Okay. Well, looks all nice and dandy. However, this isn't telling me anything right now, right? It's all blank. Well, what do you want to know? I think your instructions say for the all-star votes or home runs, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Want to know about the home runs. I'm not going to worry about the home runs right now because you all can do that. You'll do that in your assignment. But I am going to look at all-star votes. I want to know how many did they get. So to fill out the important stuff, the data about the alphas in the American League or alphas in the Federal League, which we know the alphas are only in the American League. But I'm going to take the all-star votes and I'm going to put it in values because those are going to be the values that fill out my table. Okay. And so you'll notice that I get alphas. I get the American team, the American alphas have 616. Notice that there's no federal, national alphas, right? And so someone may look at this table and is like, well, it has all that blank stuff. This isn't a good table. That's not true. Having zeros here can be very useful within data analysis. Redoing this table could also be great, but the way it is right now will be very useful. One thing that you may notice looking at this right now is the Deltas have the most votes, but the Deltas play in 2 leagues. So it is good for us to have 2 separate leagues. And so maybe there's a Delta team in the American League and Delta team in the National League, or it could be the same team. I don't know how this baseball league is working. I don't think baseball works like that, though. I think you only get 1 league. But regardless, here you go. So I could, looking at this, summarize that, hey, alphas have 616 all-star votes, betas have 300, da-da-da-da. I could even maybe make the assumption that, man, the Deltas have the best players because they have the most number of votes. The Deltas in the National League. I can quickly say that from here. If I asked you which team has the most votes from here, many of you probably would go through and start trying to sum them up for each line, maybe like, okay, I'll put it here. Here are all the alphas totals. Here are all the betas totals, and then start comparing them. Some of you may have made it a table since I just showed you that and did the total row for each one and kept filtering between each team until you got all their totals. But notice how quickly it was for here. We're able to put our teams as the rows that we want, the league they're in as the columns, and it automatically fill out their number of all-star votes. Okay. Now, Let's take a look at that values there. Because when I took all-star votes and I put it under values so that this would fill out for each cell, but it doesn't say all-star votes. It says sum of all-star votes. It took a sum of it automatically. So that's something to be aware of, because if you think back to the total row, I showed you that it had sum, it had count, it had standard deviation, it had average, all of those different things. Well, we'd have multiple options for this as well. So if I were to go to value field settings, I could change this from a sum to a count to an average if I wanted to. Notice that the name up here changes too. It changes to average of all-star votes. And I have many, many more options to summarize it, okay? I can get even crazier and get very, very specific, which I won't really go into what all this is, but you probably can understand from here. So like here it says percent of grand total. That will give me the percentage of all of these. So take each one of these and divide by the grand total. So I can see who had the highest number of percent. And then there's so much that I could do. But in essence, and for your assignment, this is the most important part. This is where you could change how you summarize your data. So if you're doing a sum, a count, and average, and just point that out because the video does the home runs differently than what the assignment asks you to do. So if you just follow that video directly, you will not get the appropriate results, and that's usually where people make a mistake on this assignment. And we like to alternate it every time to different stuff, just so that it's not the same assignment each time. I'm telling you that so that you're aware of it. Your homework assignment says to do the sum. The video may say do count. Which one do you do? All right. So, so if I wanted to change this to, let's say I change it to the average vote. Okay. Now all of those, every data, all the data changed to be our points or averages instead. Average number of all-star votes. Okay. And you know what? Maybe I want to do some filtering too for this. Maybe I only want to see a certain teams, or maybe I only want certain data points, certain data points that should be included in this summary. So for instance, we have a status for players. So I'm gonna put this in a filter because some of the players are active status, some of them are injured. So I'm only gonna look at the active players because I'm not gonna put any injured players in the all-star game. I want them to play. I want it to be exciting. I know you can have injured players on all-star teams in our life. I just do not enjoy that. It's not a punishment for them. It's I want to see people play. So yeah, there we go. So there's our, now this is only displaying for active players. If I were to select all, just look carefully at how the numbers change. So hopefully you all saw that. The numbers change when I say active players versus all players. Or if I even want to look at the injured players, maybe I'll give them a special reward or something. Notice also when doing that we only have 3 things that show up here, which I'm actually not sure why Echo's showing up. There must be something, must be some special data point for this to be included, because notice that there's 0 there. But for the Foxtrot, we have 12.5 on average of all their all-star votes. Oh, I know why it's there, because there are injured players on Echo, but they just received 0 votes for the all-star votes. So there are injured players for Foxtrot. They had on average 12.5 votes, and for golf, they had on average 1.5 votes. So, oops. So this is how we can do different summaries about what's going on here. Okay. I want to change this back to sum. I think that's going to be more useful for what we're about to do now. Okay, cool. Are there any questions about a pivot table?
So we're gonna have 2 sheets, correct?
Are you gonna have 2 sheets? Is that what you asked?
Yes.
Yes. Well, actually, first you really only need 1 sheet. Because the second part of the is, oh, okay, I see what you're saying for the first thing. Yeah, you'll have 2. You have at least 2 sheets. Because of the data originally. Yeah.
Okay, and then do you prefer to watch this video when we do our assignment, like the class recording, or like can we still watch the video on the assignment? I know you said that it might have us do like the count, but you want us to do the sum.
Yeah. So I would suggest watching that video because it literally will go through every single point, just like I am. But it'll probably be more direct for you because this I'm also adding little tidbits about, well, this is what this is called. This is a field and things like that. So the other video will be very direct for you. Definitely suggest watching that. But just keep in mind that, hey, the assignment says sum, but they said count. So yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I think that's the only difference that we ever change is what values we have you do. And by we, I mean me, because I do it. I'm the one that does it. But yeah, so it should be it. Yeah. Okay. Other questions about fields or pivot tables? Okay. How do we get the sum again? As soon as you select something to go into the values, and say I wanted to get rid of something, I could literally move it off and it goes away. But let's say we wanted to do batting averages, and I put that here in values to fill that out. It's automatically coming up as sum, but usually it actually automatically comes up as count, especially if it's your first time using it on your computer. Um, yours might not. Yours might come up as sum and be perfect. But let's just say it came up as the wrong thing. Like this came as the sum of the batting averages. I would go to the value fields setting. So I just click this drop down again, and then it came up the value field settings. I'll do that again. Put the drop down, value field settings. And now I get to select how to summarize it. So if in this case, I want to do average, I would select average. If your thing said count and you want to sum, you would select sum. And then you can click OK. Notice here you have the number format option as well. So if I wanted to, I could say even that this has to have 2 decimals. Or actually, averages are usually 3, but baseball is 3. There we go. So that's how you change it. You click that for on values. You click the drop down value field settings, and then make the change to the type of summarization you want. Okay. All right. So, yeah. You can double up on some of these too. So just show you what that looks like. I double up on our values. It says, hey, here's my American stuff, but I have the all-star votes and then I have the batting averages. If I double up on rows, let's see. Get rid of one of these. If I doubled up on rows, what I do is I get kind of a listing. So it's like, here are all my alphas, all my betas, all my charlies, all my deltas, all my echoes, and I can see individually for each one now. But I can also look at them summarized. And so some people will do this because this allows me to get more detailed within the summary. So this at first glance, this looks the exact same as what we already had, right? But underneath each one of these teams is the player numbers that associate with that team. So I look at this and say, man, the Delta's got a lot of votes, but then I could go here and then I could look very specific at these guys here. The one where we had 3,000 votes. It's like, okay, did one person really just knock it out of the park and get a lot of votes, or did they just have a lot of team members? And we look, and they just have a lot of team members. So I can get more in detail with that. Okay. So yeah, I could add multiple columns, multiple values listed, multiple rows. You can have multiple filters too if you wanted to, but it would just depend on what you want to summarize. So I just wanted to show that. I'm gonna keep it simple though, with just one in each area. And so now what I want to do is I want to visually be able to display what's going on here. And so I'm gonna go to the Analyze tab that came up because we are contextually we're working with pivot tables, so we get contextual tabs for pivot tables. So in the Analyze tab, a couple of different things we can do here. We can switch between different pivot tables. We can change the name of it as well. We can select what field we're currently working on and using. We could group things together, kind of like what I just showed you by having multiple things. I could have ungrouped them so it shows each alpha and each player number. You would probably never want to do that. There's a slicer here, which honestly, all this is a filter that makes it faster to filter. It's probably something most of you are used to looking at on a smartphone. I'll just insert one just real quick so you can see. I'll do it for status because that's the filter we have. So literally, if I click active, it shows me only for the active players. If I click injured, it shows me only for the injured players. So that's what that does. So I just got rid of it. But again, that's probably some of you are probably used to seeing. But the important part that I want to show you right now is the pivot chart, because you have to do one. So pivot chart, I can insert what I would like to. I believe the instructions I tell you to do a pie chart. Let me show you what this looks like. I think you can just do a 2D pie chart. I think this is what I have in the instructions currently, but it may not say specifically actually. But when you insert a pivot chart, it looks very similar to the charts that you all did on your assignment two assignments ago for your monthly budget. But there is some differences. For instance, here, look here with this team, we have a filter. If I want to, I could say, you know what, I'm only gonna look at those alphas. So it shows me what those alphas are. I can even see on the data point, I can see the name of the team. I can see the number of votes they have, 616. But if I want to look at everyone, all teams, maybe I will say, you know what, let me look at only the people in the National League. And so I see Deltas make up 73% of the National League. And maybe I say I only want to look at the active players. Okay. They still make up 73% of them. Okay. So I'm able to what I'm trying to show here is you're able to change what's shown in this in this chart from the chart itself. Without, as if you were doing stuff with the regular chart, you have to go back to the data, make changes in order to see things on the other side. Or if you even had a table, just a normal table, you made it made a chart off of it, you wouldn't be able to filter. You could filter the table all day. The chart still stays the same because it's based off all of the data. A pivot chart allows you to literally change or pivot what you show. Okay. Some of you, if you don't know what, if you're not sure what, or used to that word pivot, if you've ever seen anyone play basketball, sometimes you'll see them with 1 foot planted and it looks like they're moving around with the ball in hand, not dribbling, but just moving around back and forth. Sometimes to get a shot off. Kobe Bryant used to do it all the time. But that foot that's planted is their pivot foot. That's what they move around. And these are called pivot tables because you are able to move around your data. So like we're able to move, in this case here, right now we're only showing a national team. So we pivoted it based off of the league that we're in. So this league is specifically staying at national and everything else changes around that. Okay. So that's why it's called a pivot table. That's why it's called a pivot chart. One other thing to notice is as we manipulated things on the chart, our table changed automatically too. It automatically pivoted. So if I put everything back to how it was before, you'll notice all of that happened. All that changed back. So now the other part of the chart, it says it wants to show a percentage on it and your values as well and the team fill. So that comes up a lot for people. Well, how do I change what's shown on here? So what we showed you, what we looked at before was that if you, oh yeah, I don't want to show it that way. Just like a normal chart, if you were to format the selection, if I want to look at the data, let's see, where's my series at? Oh, okay. Come on, pane. I get a format data series. And what I can do a couple of things here. I could change the colors of it. I could change the border around things. I could give it 3D effects. I can also move it around. So maybe I want the blue one to be in front. I could get really specific about one of them or all of them if I wanted to. Yeah. Okay. And I can make it kind of pop out of it. Yeah. But so if you were to do this on a normal chart, one of the things that you would notice is that you can directly tell what goes onto that point. You can do the same thing on a pivot chart, but it's a little different. So when I click on it, when I go to show details, I can say what details I actually want to be shown. So for instance, I may want to show the home runs. Now it's showing all those home runs. I'm gonna take those off again. So that just allows me to quickly change what fields are actually being displayed here. You'll notice though that the chart also got updated. So I think that should be everything. Oh, the labels. Yeah. So if I add a chart element, say the data labels, notice it says like the total number of votes on it now. I mean, selecting labels. I can get very specific about that too. I go into more options. And instead of showing the value, maybe I'll show the percent as well. Yeah. And so that way I know there's 1,062 votes here, but that makes up 49% of the total data. Okay. And then I could make some more changes there, but that's how I could change what's being displayed directly on so that I can know for the pie chart, for instance, hey, what does this represent? But, okay, that should be more than that should be more than enough for you all to get through your assignment, but also to play around with it if you want to. I suggest doing your assignment, saving it, uploading it, and then going back and playing around with it just so that you feel more comfortable. With using a pivot table, this is a great tool to use throughout your life. And depending on what you're going into, you may have to do this more and more or summarize data in many ways. So, all right. But are there any questions before I let you all go? Or you can leave now because it's past time. Sorry about that. I went over again. But yeah, any questions?
All of our numbers look different, or should they all be the same, like in our chart?
All your numbers honestly will probably look they will look the same. They won't look the same as that video because again the video was doing count. Yeah, this is one of the assignments for the weekend. We'll look at the other stuff on Wednesday. So yeah, but all of you have the same data for baseball if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, so I'm asking, like, will all of our numbers look like yours by the end of, like, by the time we're done, or they will all different?
They will be based off the same information, but what I just did here was the all-star votes. You all are doing home runs.
Okay, got you. That's okay, got you.
Yeah. So we are only doing a pie chart. You only have to do one chart, and I believe I do say pie chart. Nope, I don't. I just say 3D chart. So any three-dimensional chart you want, technically. Pie chart will be easier. Oh, I actually say they're displayed on its own pie chart. Yeah. To do a pie chart, 3D pie chart. I didn't even know I changed that one. So yeah, do a 3D pie chart. Yeah, yep, and you submit an Excel file. That's correct. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. I'll see you all on Wednesday.
Professor,
Yes.
do you want the pie chart to be in its own sheet?
If you want to, you can. I did not. I did not make that a requirement for this one, but it's your choice.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I'll say.
Oh,
I'll say one thing I'll say about that though. For this one, it's easier to see the manipulation. Like as you change something on the chart, you'll automatically change over here. Or if you change something over here, it'll update on the chart too. That's kind of cool to see on the same page. But again, if you're able to present the real data, you'll want the sheet to probably be on its own, or the chart to be on its own sheet.
okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you, Professor.
you're welcome.
I will see you on Wednesday.
See you on Wednesday.
Okay, bye.
Bye.